What's up, everyone? My name is ZayNews, and this is the ZayNews Podcast, where we talk about all things basketball, whether it's the NBA, college hoops, youth sports, you name it. If it's about basketball, then we talk about it here. If you like the content, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you hate the content, if you hate my takes, let me know in the comments. Let me know why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong so we can engage, have a debate back and forth, and get into some things because I want to have these open discussions and I want to have my opinion change just as much as I want to change your opinion when it comes to this basketball stuff. Very passionate about it. I'm sure you are as well. So make sure you engage with the community and we build, just something awesome over here. Okay. So without further ado, we all know what time it is. We all know that it's currently the NBA finals. Even though, you have whispers in the background, people not watching, people saying the views are down, et cetera, because it's two small market teams. I could not care in the least. I'll tell you what, this playoffs from start to finish has been one of the best and most competitive that I can think of in recent memory, right? There are no complaints on my end. And my team lost in the first round, right? I'm a Lakers fan. We got bounced, we got whooped back in April. So to tell you that I'm still watching, I'm still loving all the games, it's still very engaging basketball. And it's something that is continuing to pique my interest, right? Because I feel like they are finally finding a balance, especially in the playoffs, between physicality, between some of the new rule adjustments and the widespread offenses where there's a lot more spacing than there has been traditionally, but not catering too much to, superstars and, giving them too friendly whistles and teams more generally just, foul baiting and stuff like that. Sure, you got people talking about Shea and how he tends to really try to draw fouls. But also, that man is a bucket, and that man is extremely hard to guard. He's a master at getting into people's bodies and making contact happen. And I love what I'm seeing. So yeah, let's talk about the finals a little bit more specifically. Let's get into the finals and just what I saw after Game 5 yesterday, and how I think the rest of the series is going to play out. So, as you guys know by now, the Oklahoma City Thunder won Game 5, and they went up 3-2 in the series. That was the first time a team in the series has won two back-to-back games. They've split, going 1-1 back and forth up until then. And I thought Game 5 was a very important game. But to be honest with you, I thought Game 5 was more important for OKC, at least until we found out that Tyrese Halliburton was hurt. So going into the game, I just want to give you guys my perception because hindsight always 2020, right? You can always make a change of opinion after you know all the facts. But I want to give you guys a real and transparent view on what I was feeling going into the game. Going into Game 5, I thought Game 5 was more important for OKC than it was for the Pacers. And the reason being is because the Pacers got to go back home for Game 6, right? And extend the series that way. I thought if OKC would have lost Game 5, going back to uh, Indiana and trying to win Game 6 on their court when Indiana is going to be ferocious and they're going to have so much energy in trying to end that series right then and there on their home court. Whew, I thought it was going to be a tall task for them. But unbeknownst to me, Tyrese Halliburton was hurt. He still played 34 minutes, was not as effective as we are accustomed to seeing Tyrese Halliburton. Obviously, when you have a calf strain, it's one of those things that can be pretty debilitating. You know what I'm saying? It can be pretty debilitating and really affect your ability to, you know, explode if you're trying to rip through, get to the rim. And Tyrese Halliburton's game is really predicated on creating advantages for his teammate, playing within the offense. Not always, exploding the score, but exploding to make a play, and you could tell that just wasn't really there for him. They got great minutes out of, you know, Nasty Nash is what they call him, TJ McConnell. They got great minutes out of some other guys as well. They played a good game. They fought hard. Pascal Siakam was there. He was trying to make his presence felt and take on some of the stuff that Tyrese just couldn't do that he would normally do. So I respect the effort. I think OKC was just better than them yesterday. You know what I'm saying? They just seemed to have a answer for everything that the Pacers were throwing at them. Those runs that the Pacers were trying to make late, a different day, a different game with a healthy Tyrese, those might have made, OKC sweat a little bit. And we saw that happen in game one of this series, right? They can really go on runs and just, man, turn a 15-point lead into turn 15 points down into 5 points up, in the snap of the fingers. But they just weren't able to do that. So, again, I thought that game going in was going to be more important for OKC. Now, I don't know the Tyrese dynamic. I still think this series is going 7. Um, but obviously, if Tyrese can't play, if, he's so debilitated that he just is playing at 60% of himself, that does change things, right? Your best player, second best player, whatever you guys want to call Tyrese, I'd say, if anything, maybe most important, right? Just because he's the engine to their offense. Uh, then that changes things. But assuming that Tyrese is, let's say, 85%, and assuming that he can, you know, bite down, play hard, and be a factor, be a presence, I think this series will still go 7. I still think Indiana will find a way to get it done at home. And then I picked the Thunder to win the series. I'm still rocking with the Thunder. I still think they'll get it done. But as you guys know, and as I say all the time, Lord knows what's going to happen in a game 7, right? Anything can happen in a game 7. You just kind of got to wait to see how that one's going to play out. But tremendous basketball being played. Not enough good things that I can say about these two teams. Two deserving teams, two young teams, two balanced teams from top to bottom who play really deep. Honestly, on paper, they have a lot of similarities. Obviously, they execute things a little bit differently, right? They, um, as an OKC, can be a little bit more ISO dependent in their offenses at times because they have a guy like Shea. Guy like Jalen Williams has been hooping. And this is another thing that we got to start talking about. Jalen Williams may be finals MVP if he goes in and has 25 in game 6 and they close him out. You know what I'm saying? Because 40 last night, he's been having 25 plus, I think, like 3 of the past 4 games before that. He's only scored in the teens like once in this series, but he's been hooping. And he has been defending at an extremely high level, right? Guarding the best player on the Pacers and Pascal Siakam, right? Like, that's a conversation that needs to be had. And I think if he did win Finals MVP, not that I think Shea would care or whatever, but I think he may end up deserving that Finals MVP. Now, still game to be played. Who knows? Shea's been tremendous as well. He's been scoring at such a high level, been efficient, been their leader as he has been all season. But after game 1, Jalen Williams really started to pick it up, and he's been playing consistently, right? And that's one thing that has been asked of him, and he has struggled to do up until this series, right? Even in this year's playoffs, he struggled to be consistent every game. Last year, obviously, different story. He was a year younger. He, had to go through some stuff. His first real playoff run, but it seems like he's really comfortable in the series. I think playing against other guys who are young like him, there's not that experience dynamic that guys can take advantage of if you were to play against a team like Denver or something along those lines, right? Where there's an experience dynamic that Denver team has that can be hard to combat, whereas they're kind of on a level playing field with Indiana, and I think that does a lot for his confidence, right? Knowing that the guys that he's playing against are of his caliber or lower, right? But like their achievements, their accomplishments don't exceed his, right? So he sees that and he's like, "Oh, I could be the best player on the court." And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing him play at such a high level so consistently this series, because he probably feels like and that's not to say he doesn't feel like he should be in those other series, but anytime there's like that big brother dynamic, when you're going up against guys, it could just change perception a little bit, change mentality a little bit. And it seems like this one, he's like, "Nah, I'm not the young buck here. I'm that dude. I've arrived. We're the same. I'm looking at you eye to eye. You're looking at me eye to eye, and we got to go take care of business." And I think that's a little bit of what we're getting in the series and why he's been able to be so consistently great at such a high level, right? You're talking, you're now seeing in the media people talking about, can he be the next Scottie Pippen? And the way he defends, the way he plays offense, being that second primary, offensive guy, second primary ball handler, scorer, he definitely could have a similar career to that, right? Whether they win 6 championships or not, but they do have a team that could end up being a dynasty, depending on how things play out over the next 3 or so years when guys start signing bigger deals and all that sort of stuff. But he, he's going to be great. He's going to be great. I love his mindset. I love his mentality. His he seems very even kill, right? Doesn't get too high, too low, and I think all that plays into why he's been such a huge factor. And to be honest with you, I think that's true for their entire team. I think their entire team is very good at staying even kill. Starts with Shea, Jalen, and trickle down effect. Hardenstein, all those guys seem to just be very level headed, and no one you know goes off in one direction or the other too quickly or too much in any particular instance, whether they win or lose. So hats off to him. Hats off to Jalen Williams. As much as he gets criticized for sometimes having dips and plays throughout the playoffs, throughout important games in the regular season, got to tip your hat when guys do the opposite, and he's clearly doing the opposite this playoff run. So, again, give him a pat on the back, say, good work to Jalen Williams. Let's see how this series winds up. Again, I still do think it's probably going to go 7, but that I think is largely Halliburton dependent and how healthy he is and how much he can give you in Game 6. But I will say I think Indiana is going to be revved up and ready to go Game 6. They fought all season, backs against the wall, feeling like nobody believes in them, feeling like they're the underdogs, feeling like, people continuously second guess and doubt them. They're going to come in ready to go. And I think Game 6 has potential to be an excellent game. And if OKC's not, if OKC doesn't come in prepared and if they don't come in ready to close them out, it could be a 20-point. That could be another big loss for them. Similar to what happened in the previous series against Minnesota when they got blasted. It could be one of those games if they don't come trying to close them out. I hope they do. I hope they come trying to close them out on Indiana's home court, not with some idea that we want to end it on our home court, because that's a dangerous game. This isn't, you're up 3-1 and you have a couple games to spare. This is one game that you have to spare. And once it goes to Game 7, again, we don't know what that looks like. One bad ankle roll this way, that way, it's quiet for you. So come in ready to close them out. You could have the parade in OKC at a later day, but get that done. Get that done. Really come in with that mindset. And then, even if you don't get it done, you still are in a much better place come in Game 7, knowing that, you fought hard. Indiana's going to be worn down after a hard-fought game. They're going to be a little bit more fatigued. Now the injuries are compiling. You go into Game 7 with a little bit more confidence. Whereas if you just let your foot off the gas and get rallied, sure, you may have more energy because you didn't press as hard, but also you have more doubts as well, I think. So that's my thoughts on the finals, man. It's been exciting stuff. Again, if you don't like the basketball that's being played, I'm assuming you're just not a real basketball fan and you're more of a narrative fan, storyline fan, which isn't a problem, right? I think most of the fans for any sport are more so casual fans, right? We all have our own lives and stuff like that, but just get these narratives out of there. The narratives that, the basketball right now that's being played isn't great basketball. The narratives that, these guys aren't playing at an extremely high level, because it's just all not true. It's not true, and it's you can see it clear as day. So yeah, let me close this real quick. Got some shine on the head. My head is glistening. Goodness gracious. Okay, so moving on, wanted to get into the big trade that happened over the weekend, and that was the Memphis Grizzlies traded Desmond Bane to the Orlando Magic for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 4 first-round picks, and who was there's one more guy included in that. Who was the fourth guy? Cole Anthony. So, yes, going back to it. So, the Memphis Grizzlies over the weekend traded Desmond Bane for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, and 4 first-round picks. Now, I saw a lot of people saying, oh my goodness, if Desmond Bane is worth 4 first-round picks, what does that do to the rest of this offseason and the trade market, the free agency market, all that sort of stuff? Because the belief is that they've now set the bar. They've set the market price, and now teams are going to be on the lookout for that sort of thing. Let me tell you why I love this trade. Let me tell you why, I'm not too worried about the 4 first-round picks. And then, we'll get into some of that other stuff later. So first and foremost, I love this trade for the Orlando Magic because to me, it feels like the Orlando Magic see that there's a real opportunity in the East next season to make waves, to push for a legitimate finals run, and they're trying their best to put pieces in place to make that happen. So Desmond Bane is a better player than both Cole Anthony and Contavious Caldwell-Pope. He's a great third option. He's been able to, similar to Austin Reeves, I might add, he's been able to fluctuate between being the first option and the third option pretty fluidly, right? Depending on the game, depending on the phase of Memphis, whether Ja is in or out of the lineup over the past 2 seasons, what type of production Jaren Jackson is giving you on a given game, right? Like he's very good at um, adjusting to the guys around him, right? I think most people would argue that Ja and Jaren are probably more talented players than he is, but he's probably been their most consistent offensive piece over the past 2 seasons with everything that has gone on with that franchise. He's a guy who can get you 20 a night, no problem, shoot the three ball very efficiently. More generally, just a really good shooter, whether it's coming off pin downs, shooting off pick and roll with the ball in his hands, right? I think he's a very versatile shooter, and he's also a dog, right? He gets up and down, he can defend, he plays hard, he's aggressive. I really like this. Obviously, he's a floor spacer for Orlando, but I just really like Orlando saying, we're going to go out and we're going to really try to make moves now to make a run for next season, because we feel like we have two young guys who are killers in Wagner and Paolo, and we think those two guys can be the best two guys in any series in the East. So we want to surround them with people who are going to really help down the stretch when we're getting into the playoffs and trying to make deep playoffs runs. And I think this is the type of move that can do that for them, right? You still got Jalen Suggs who's going to come back, be healthy, dog on defense. You got a guy now in Desmond Bane who's going to, again, be a floor spacer who can play off stars really well and can also be that guy in spots when you need him to be that guy, right? Can give you 20 a game, can be a consistent shooter, shoot 40 plus from three, and really just open the floor. Now, I still think they need a little bit more floor spacing. I still think there's a lot of growth to happen between Wagner and Paulo, just as being, those guys being, first, not first, but being all NBA guys who can really drive a team to a deep playoff run. There's some work to be done on their end. I think, their decision making can improve. Just so they can, become better passers. They can open up their offense a little bit. It's not so isolation heavy. Some of that's coaching as well, getting more movement within their offense, that sort of stuff. I think are all things that can be done a little bit better. But again, they're 22, 23 years old. They're going to make those adjustments and continue to grow. I'm not too concerned with that. I think this move just shows this move shows what the Magic's front office believes they have in Paolo and Wagner. You know what I'm saying? It shows that they have the utmost faith in these two young guys, and that they believe if they pair the right people around them, that they can really go for it. And right, the East is wide open next year. You got Boston, who's going to be hobbled, who's probably going to be looking to make some trades this summer as well to off some of that high tax bill that they have and the salary cap that they have. You got Milwaukee, who knows? Excuse me. You got Milwaukee, who knows what they're going to do, whether they do ultimately trade Giannis or if they don't. But the East is just going to be very wide open. What's happening with Philly? What's happening with the Knicks? They're talking about making some trades. A lot of movement. So we shall see. We shall see. But I definitely like this trade because it instills confidence into your guys, saying, we believe you guys are talented enough to win now. We just need to make some minor moves to help facilitate that, do our job to help you guys do your job. And I think the sky's the limit for that. I think Paulo's a winner. I think Wagner's a winner. Both guys were injured for significant amounts of time last season, right? I think both guys got the same injury and were out for like 6 weeks. So, come in healthy, come in ready to go. They're obviously going to make some strides this summer and become better basketball players. And then you got a guy like Desmond Bane, who's seems just like the ultimate professional who just comes in ready to go every night. Sky's looking up for them. It's definitely looking up for the Orlando Magic. Now, getting deeper into this trade, I don't know what this means for Memphis. And the reason why I'm not too concerned with the first 4 round picks is because if they would have stayed with Orlando, these first round picks weren't going to be high value picks anyways. You know what I'm saying? It's not like these 4 first round picks were going to be all lottery picks, all top 5 picks. These guys were going to be playoff teams every year anyways, right? So if they gave first round picks over the next 4 seasons, they're making the playoffs all 4 of those seasons. So those picks turn from, maybe a lottery pick to a, maybe like a 28th, 25th to 30th pick, which a lot of times you can get some of those guys in the early second round anyways. So it's not, as much as we see first round picks as this eye popping thing, and they do matter, they do have value because you can turn them into assets like we saw for Bane. Um, but if they would have held on to those picks, what does that turn into for them, right? For one, you're shortening the window of the 2 high level guys that you already have on your roster, because now you have to wait and see. You have to wait and see every year and see if you're going to get something that's valuable. And it's just shortening that window each year that you don't actively try to win. And to be honest with you, if we're being fair, very few teams have been able to um, build. What am I trying to say? Very few teams have had success being bad for a long time and then assuming that like picks are just going to solve the problem, right? Just building through the draft. Very few teams have been able to build through the draft completely and like holistically, right? OKC has kind of done that. You know, they made some moves along the way, like signing Caruso, signing Hardenstein, but in general, right? They have done that for the most part, trading for Shea, but you know, at some point you got to make some trades, you got to make some moves, you got to use those assets to get some proven guys, because if you're constantly trying to search for something in the future, usually it just doesn't work out for you. Just doesn't work out for you over the long stretch of things. So I like what they're doing. I like that they're being active. I think I'm a little bit confused on what Memphis is trying to do, right? And I'll be interested to see if they make any more moves, whether it's Ja, whether it's Jaren Jackson. Maybe they're at a point where it's like the West is just getting better. We don't think that we're getting any better, and therefore we may as well rebuild. That'd be interesting. Ja's so young, Jaren's still really young. You got a defensive player of the year candidate. I think, Ja, if he's healthy and if he's in the right mindset, as a all NBA guy. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know what they're doing, because Desmond Bane, I think, has been their most reliable player over the past 2 to 3 seasons. So, and I think he was a great piece alongside those guys. So maybe maybe they think they got to mix it up. And I mean, they're not wrong. They definitely got to get better. But I just don't know if Bane was the piece to move. You get 4 first round picks. You get 4 first round picks. So maybe you are actively trying to improve through young players. And if you are, I'll be interested to see what kind of moves they make. I'm just not really sure what direction they're headed. So I don't want to give too much. I don't want to criticize too much without knowing what they're trying to accomplish, because maybe they move. I saw a report that said the Knicks were really high on Jaren Jackson, and they thought pairing him alongside Cat, which I could see, right? You get a defensive big that can cover up a lot of Cat's holes, who can also stretch the floor. I could see that being a good fit. I don't know what you'd have to give up to get him. Probably Anunoby or Mikal, plus some picks. Maybe I don't think you're doing just Jaren straight up for Anunoby or Mikal. You're definitely not. Now that I think about it, no, not with him being like a perennial all defensive player, all star. Yeah, you're not doing that. So we'll be interested to see what the asking price is of some of those guys if they do decide to trade him. And then if you do trade Jaren, what do you do with Ja? Because now you just have Ja with nothing around him, right? I don't know. I don't know what the point of that is either. You may as well go full rebuild. So we'll see. We'll see. Again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. This year's offseason is going to be one of the craziest off seasons that we have seen in quite a long time. I'm talking about a whole bunch of pieces moving, teams shifting the deck. There's a lot of teams who have convinced themselves that they're only one piece away, or they have, a star player in Giannis that they're trying to appease. Where does Kevin Durant go? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of moving pieces that are going to create a trickle down effect. Once one piece moves, another piece more start coming through the funnel, right? Because you start to see what these rosters have, what they need, what's available, and where they can get in and really try to, some of these other teams that may not make big moves try and just, eat off the scraps, right? And win around the margins, which typically, is what great teams do. So I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see it. And that brings me to my next point. Where do you guys think Kevin Durant ends up? I'm seeing reports that it's either two of the Texas teams in, the Rockets or Spurs, or maybe Miami. I think all of those are great fits. I think, him in Miami does help Miami, but I don't think he helps them enough to make them like a contender, to be honest with you. I think Miami, with the makeup that they currently have, has kind of ran its course. And I think bringing in a 37-year-old Kevin Durant will, again, I don't want to minimize how great Kevin Durant is. He will definitely help. But still, it's just, I just don't know. I don't know if they have enough. Maybe, but like, what do they still, even with Kevin Durant, let's say you just add Kevin Durant to their current roster. Does that make them have enough firepower to beat some of these other teams coming out of the East and West? I don't know. Like, I still think they'd have a really hard time with the Knicks. I still think they'd have a really hard time with, shoot, Detroit. You know what I'm saying? Cade Cunningham's only going to get better. Indiana, I wouldn't pick them against Indiana. Oh, it's rough. And I love Bam. I love KD. Tyler Hero's awesome, but it's just, I don't love that fit. Now, if he goes to the Rockets or Spurs, depending on what they have to give up, watch out. Watch out. Either one of those teams, watch out. Spurs, whoo. But I mean, you start putting a guy like that with somebody like Wemby and De'Aaron Fox and, Vasil. Jeez. Or Castle, excuse me, rookie of the year. Man, that's scary. Personally, I would rather see Giannis end up on the Spurs, but I get him probably staying over on the East just with how lopsided it feels in terms of star power, West versus East. It feels like, in the West, there's a legitimate 12 teams that are like playoff contenders, as long as, obviously one injury here or there can really shift things, but just feels like there's so much depth in the West. And it doesn't feel that way over in the East. So I could see Giannis staying over in the East, and I wouldn't be mad at that. But it to me on paper, like seeing Giannis and Wemby front court just sounds absolutely ludicrous to me. And I think that's a championship roster right away. Right away. Yeah, I do. So we'll see. We'll see. But fun stuff happening. I'm excited to see, what kind of trickle down effect happens, once people start getting moved. Bane was the start, but we'll definitely see more as time goes on, for sure, for sure, for sure. So we just got to wait and see how everything winds up. I'm excited for the NBA offseason. Um, I'm interested to see actually what the Pacers and the Thunder do, depending on who loses, right? I imagine the team that wins will probably stay put, not make too many moves. But OKC won 68 games. If they lose in the finals, do they just run it back? They're a team with a lot of assets. They're a team that could explore getting a guy like Giannis. They're a team that could explore getting, a number of guys with how many assets they have, right? What do they feel like they need in order to be a better team? I'm not really sure. I mean, if you can go get Giannis, maybe you go get Giannis. Would you trade like Chet and, through two or three of those bench guys, plus some picks for Giannis? I mean, you could, right? You could. They legitimately have one of the few. Um, they're legitimately one of the few teams with enough assets to go out and put a package together for Giannis. So if they lose up 3-2 in the finals, do they go fishing? Do they go try and see something? See if we can, really just bridge that gap and make sure that we get the job done. If the Pacers lose, two teams who have done great, but typically things don't get easier, right? Like I wouldn't expect the Pacers to necessarily have this great of a run next season if they lost in the finals and just decided to run it back. Um, Running it back would entail having to sign back Miles Turner, who I believe is a free agent this summer. But if you lose, do you sign back Miles Turner? Do you try and make any trades? the thing about the Pacers is they have to be more strategic because it's harder for them to sign guys. It feels like, but they've done a great job of building that roster. Do they trade Miles Turner? Do they do a sign and trade? Try and see if they can get a piece there. I don't know, maybe, but that'll be interesting because I do think either one of those teams could make some moves if they lose. I think front office wise, they may be comfortable with where they're at if they win, um, and just roll the dice and see what happens again next year. But those are two teams that could potentially make some moves for sure, and I'm interested to see what happens there. But again, exciting stuff happening in the NBA. I don't have too much for you guys, so I'll wrap up here. But remember to make sure if you like the content, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know where I'm tripping. Let me know where I'm on point. Let me know if there's any topics that you want me to touch on because I'm always happy to touch on new topics as I get more and more followers and we build more of a community. One thing I want to do is I want to get into a little bit of film study, watching highlights, watching team clips, breaking the game down as I see it, giving you guys my perspective as a guy who's played this game for a long time and a guy who's played it at a high level, coached coached a little bit as well, done that whole thing. So exciting stuff happening over here on my platform, continuing to grow. You'll see a lot of shorts coming out and clips of this podcast. Just trying to get my face out more, trying to grow, trying to again create a community. My thing is if I could talk about basketball, a few times a week with a community of people who are as passionate about it as I am, then I'm winning. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm a dad of two now. I just turned 30. It's not the same as it was when I was 18 and you could just go play for 4 hours a day every day and trying to work towards something. It's a little bit different now, but if you could still keep basketball present in your life, what's better than that? You know what I'm saying? So appreciate you guys for the support. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and we'll talk soon. Peace.